Hi, I'm a Canon C300.
And I'm a Sony FS7.
So it's time to make a comparison. If you haven't signed up for our new giveaway, you're missing out. It's still going on. You've got to the end of the month of October. Vanguard's giving away 3 great products for 3 different winners. We've got that Ultra Pro carbon fiber tripod with a ball head. Fabulous tripod. I use those all the time and I love them. They've got that VO travel tripod with a pan head. I take that in my suitcase when I travel every single time. And last of all, that Heralder 51 Traveler Roller Traveler bag. Great bag. Love each one of these products. Get over to theslantlens.com where you can win today. Sign up today. Don't miss out. Hi, this is JP Morgan.
And this is Kenneth Merrill.
And we're back for another camera comparison. This is the 3rd we've done in this series. And we're excited about the format. We're excited about the things we're showing. We're going to make some tweaks, but this next one's very similar to the last 2 we've done. We're looking at the FS7, the Sony FS7 versus the Canon C300 Mark II, which is the only reason you can make this comparison is because the Canon dropped their price so drastically not so long ago.
That is very true.
Because now they're starting to get into the same category. I mean, $12,000 for the Canon versus $7 or $8 for the C300.
Yeah, roughly that.
So I mean, I'm still
vice versa.
Vice versa. Did I say that? Yeah, sorry, vice versa. So I mean, you're still, if money is the object, the FS7 is pretty attractive.
Yeah, and honestly, looking through this footage, I think you'll see that it's a good thing Canon dropped their price because I don't think it warrants that much more money.
It'd be hard to justify that $16,000 price tag when you look at the FS7 and look at the footage comparatively. It's pretty amazing how close these cameras are.
Very close match.
So let's look at the footage. Let's look for, what do we have, ISO up first? Or?
Yeah, let's do the ISO test.
So this is geeking out for sure because we got just ISO forever. Starting at 800, which 800 is native for the Canon, right?
Yeah, that's the base ISO. If you go lower than that, you're going to get less dynamic range.
Okay.
So we go 8, then 16, and then we'll have the Sony jump in at 2000, which is its base ISO.
Base ISO, yeah.
Which isn't really a problem because you have built-in NDs.
On both these cameras have built-in NDs, which is fabulous. I mean, if you're working and running and gunning, to have built-in NDs is just incredible.
That's probably the top reason to buy something other than a DSLR.
Yeah, it's one of the big ones because you start putting filters on. And variables are good, but they're not amazing. There's some major flaws with them. So we missed all this here.
Well, they're honestly almost identical.
You've got to get up to the
about 3200. Once you get into 6400, you start to see a little bit of grain.
So who starts falling apart first? Do you think we go to 6400? I mean, Canon's holding pretty strong at 6400.
Canon's holding up pretty well, but I do notice it doesn't hold its. Actually, both cameras kind of get a lot of noise in the red channels first. Yeah, which is interesting.
Well, the blacks are certainly dancing. That black dress on the left when you hit
6400
is definitely. And her hair is falling apart. But who shoots at 12,500? My word, buy a light.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, honestly, you would rarely use that. And both of these cameras are very capable up to about 3,200. Yeah. Even 64, run some neat video over that, and 64 probably be clean.
So they seem to be pretty comparable. I think the Sony starts to fall apart a little sooner than the Canon on the high end.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. But really comparable.
It's really close. It's really close.
These cameras are head-to-head competitors. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of which one you choose to go with will depend on who you've been with before.
Yeah, and why is that? Why is it, you think?
They're just very different. I mean, honestly, I've used the Sony FS5 quite a bit, and I've also used the C100 and the C300, so I'm more familiar with the Canon. I pick up the Sony FS7, and it's like an alien. But there are people that say it's just as usable as the Canon. I think it really just depends on your background.
You just have to get used to it. I did find using the two of them that the ease of use for the Sony was a little more difficult than the Canon. Yeah. The Canon just is a little more intuitive. But then I do have, I don't know. I at this point have as many Sonys as I have Canons. I have a whole case of both. So I'm using both of them, but more of the DSLRs. So when I hit the Sony, the Canon felt like it was easier to get through the menus, easier to find things. Sony was a little more difficult, but then it's probably just a matter of exposure. Once you get involved with it, it wouldn't be as difficult.
And I think a lot of it comes down to customizability, like we talked about in our last review. The Sony has a lot more buttons, it has a lot more menus, a lot more picture profiles and looks, because you can really dial it into what you need, which is a real advantage for some people.
More options, yeah, that's great. Well, let's look at how this falls apart. What's our
maximum dynamic range?
Yeah, maximum dynamic range.
So we shot the Sony in Cine EI mode, which basically means it just sets I guess the white balance is burned in, but it sets a white balance. Your ISO is 2000 no matter what, and you can't really adjust the picture profile. Okay. It's just a flat S-Log3 picture profile. The Canon we shot in C-Log2, which is their flattest profile. We thought that would probably match up best with the Sony S-Log3. And they're both looking really clean and really great. What's interesting is to look at the colors that each camera does better. I think the Sony picks up on yellows a lot better.
Much better.
But it can also reflect some yellow in the skin. If you look at the incandescent reflection on her right arm, it's a lot more pronounced than it is in the Canon.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Maybe not a lot.
But you do see the warmth on her arm. Yeah.
Different colors are going to react differently for each camera, and you have to just be prepared. It's something you should really test out. If you're going to make an investment, you should really test both of these cameras out. Well,
the red dress just looks a lot better on the Canon than it does on the Sony, for sure. It has kind of it's just I don't know, kind of washed out a little bit.
As we get up to +4 stops, both of these cameras are still holding really well.
It's amazing to me. You go +4 stops and they're
looking fine.
So you've taken this footage, it's +4, and you've just pulled it back into correct exposure.
Yeah, exactly, with color grading only.
That's incredible. I mean, and they're both holding up.
The Sony starts to clip a little bit in her face at +5 stops.
Yeah, I see the highlight on her
just
cheek
a
starts
tiny
to...
bit.
Look at the Canon.
The Canon clips very hard at 5.
Yeah, it's like it fell off the cliff.
So that's telling me that the Sony is going to have, at least a half stop
more in the
highlights.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you reach 6, I mean, I don't know a single camera on Earth that can do 6 over.
No.
Except Alexa's pretty close.
But is it pretty close?
Pretty close.
Yeah. But they comfortably do 4.
Yeah, both of these cameras comfortably do 4, which is really great. Now we look at the underexposure test. I noticed in grading this, if you start at a proper exposure on this Sony, it's already a little bit noisy. You really should go 1 stop over. That's just across the board with S-Log, it seems.
Just give a little. Well, you're always better to give just a little bit more exposure. It's just going to give you a little bit of more chunk to your.
Yeah.
Is that the word? That's a technical term. More chunk to your image. Just more guts to your image. More to deal with. Yeah.
In this underexposure, as usual, the S-Log doesn't perform super well. At -2, you're already seeing a ton of noise, and the dress is on the left. The Canon fares a little better, but not by a huge margin. I would probably say the Canon would outlast by 1 stop in the shadows.
Yeah, it looks like that. -3, the Sony is really in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the Canon at -3 is, I mean, not near as bad. You're gaining. I think you're right. You're gaining at least a stop.
The issues here really become color separation. I think the Sony actually holds on to its color. Like her skin tone is a lot better underexposed on the Sony, even though the noise is completely useless.
Yeah.
Whereas the Canon loses the saturation in all the colors pretty quickly.
It does. Well, there you go. So now we're going to look at this thing in just a really harsh backlight situation. So this has got to be the Sony, right?
Yeah, this is the Sony. Now the point of this test was to see how much shadow and how much highlight detail can we retain at the same time.
Yeah, so she's not lit at all. She's
not
just
lit
dead,
at all.
Dead. I mean, there's a little bit of ambient in the room, but she's pretty dark in that scene.
She's really dark.
And you're looking at an outside scene, bright windows outside.
Both cameras do pretty well, but you can definitely see an advantage in the Sony.
It's fascinating what you call an advantage, which is an advantage. It's more open, you got everything, but I look at the Canon image and it looks a lot nicer to me.
You think?
Absolutely. Huh. I mean, look at that. You have, it's almost a usable image.
Well,
all I need is a little bit of light on her face and I'm ready to go, without grading it. But you love the fact that it's you just got total, you got everything's there and you can now grade it.
Yeah,
do what you want
exactly.
with it. Whereas the Canon's a lot more contrasty. So you're not going to do much with those shadows on the Canon. It's pretty dark. It's not going to do it.
Now, there is one thing I noticed, and I want to point this out with caution because I'm not sure if this is a copy of the camera that we had or if this is just a general flaw. I did read up and hear some people were having this issue with the C300, but if you look closely on her face in the shot from the C300, you can see these magenta and green streaks coming across her hair.
Is that from these highlight bars from the background, from the windows behind?
It is. I've encountered that one other time on a documentary shoot I had with the C300. I posed the question online to see if anybody had found a fix for that, in case you are backed into a corner and have to shoot in this situation. Someone told me that doing a black balance on the camera would solve that problem. So I have yet to test it, but there you go. If you run into it, that might be the answer. On the other hand, the Sony doesn't have any of that, so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
food for thought.
Interesting. Yeah. So I think you're looking at some the highlight and the shadow ratio is causing a flare, or I don't know if flare is the right word.
Yeah, it's
the
some
sensor
sort of
weird. Yeah.
Sensor's weird.
It's a weird sensor thing.
Anyways, I think like we said before, the cameras are a really close match.
Very close match. So it kind of comes down to what are you used to using, how much money do you want to spend,
and what features
lenses
do you
have?
need? Oh, what lenses?
Yeah, I mean, lenses always, I mean, if you've got a whole collection of certain lens type, you're going to make a decision on that. But you can put a metabones on the FS7, can't you?
Yeah, so actually the mount on the FS7, the E mount, actually makes it really flexible because you can, the short flange depth means you could adapt any lens that you want to that system. I think if you're shooting slow motion, FS7 all the way.
Well, yeah, it's a weird frame rate, like
180 frames in 2K.
In 2K, 180 frames in 2K. That's huge.
It's huge. I actually don't know of any other camera that shoots that frame rate for under 10,000.
Yeah. So on the Canon, you only get, what, 60 at 2K?
Well, actually, you can do 120 at 2K, but it's in a crop mode. So your crop factor is going to be 3 times compared to a full frame sensor.
So the advantages of the Sony is you have the ability to do slow motion in 2K.
And 4K. It does 60. It does 60p in 4K. Canon only does 30 in 4K. So if you do slow motion, go with the Sony.
What are the other advantages? Either way, they both got built-in NDs.
They both have built-in NDs that are great. I think they're both very flexible in post. They both have pretty good color. It probably just depends on your taste. I would say the Canon probably has better preamps in its XLRs, which is nice if you need to put audio right into your camera.
That's another reason why these cameras are so fabulous. So it's got 2 XLRs on the Canon, and same with the FS7.
I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's the same with the FS7.
So you think the preamps are better on the Canon?
I think so.
Canon has pretty incredible preamps, and they really do.
The audio.
That's a huge advantage. If you're running sound, not having to have an external recorder, and just, if you're doing interviews or things that are quick, it's really easy to just get the sound back to the media on the camera. So.
One thing that we should talk about that we forgot to talk about in our last review is autofocus. The autofocus on the Canon is incredible.
That has that little green thing as you're going on there, as you get in or out.
Yeah,
So if you're doing an interview and the person's kind of rocking in their chair, it gives you the ability to keep them right in focus.
Exactly. Even if you don't want to use the autofocus feature itself, you can still use those electric contacts to tell you, are they too close or are they too far? Because the camera knows.
Yeah.
It's really incredible.
That's good.
The Sony also has autofocus. I haven't ever experienced Sony's autofocus.
We didn't use it on set because we were shooting, all these tests were done with a 50mm Canon lens.
Yeah.
And so we were wanting to use the same lens, so you're looking at lens-to-lens comparison. Lens wasn't an issue in the comparison.
The FS7 would need native E-mount lenses to autofocus.
You have a native lens, yep.
Adapters can be finicky sometimes.
Even now, the metabones on a lot of my Sonys, I've got to turn them sometimes and reconnect the lens to get them to, not always, but sometimes it'll happen.
On the other hand, if you like speed boosters, you could use a speed booster with the FS7 because it's a crop sensor.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
That would be fabulous. How about weight and form, function? I mean, for me, the Canon was easier to use, but
right. But actually, there are a couple things in terms of form factor.
That was the word I was looking for.
The Sony does go on your shoulder easier, which is nice. That's generally how people use cameras, whereas a Canon's meant to be, I guess, held in front of you, which is strange for a cinema camera.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. I was looking at it going, how do I stabilize this?
Right.
You know, you're going to have to put it against your eye and your elbows. It's back to the old 35mm. It's back to DSLR, basically.
I have found that it works really well with an easy rig, though. It's a vest contraption that has an arm that comes over and a cable, and it'll hook onto the C300, and the camera just floats in front of me, which is really convenient.
How expensive are those?
The one I use is only $1,500.
Only $1,500. Hey, pick up two.
Compared to the full-size one, it's like $4,000. So.
Okay. But that'd be great if you're doing this kind of that floating look, you know, it'd be really easy to do in front of you. But if you really want to stabilize it, that doesn't stabilize it.
Definitely not. That's for a very specific kind of use.
Yeah.
The one thing that the Canon does have over the FS7, I think, is the EVF. The FS7 has one screen, and it's about a 4-inch screen that has a loop on it, so it can either be a monitor or an EVF. The issue is that it's not particularly good at either thing, because a looped monitor, in my opinion, never looks as good as like a real EVF, and a tiny screen is just really
small.
tiny. Yeah. The Canon has a really great EVF, I think.
Well, it's got an EVF and it's got a screen.
And plus it's got an articulable screen.
Yeah,
so
which gives you both those options. Yeah, which is nice. So if you're wanting to hold it out here and work down low or something, you can do it, or you can get it right on the camera.
Also, the Canon is very strippable. You can take your screen attachment off, the top handle off, the side handle off, and you'll still have full control of the body. Yeah. And just like a little box almost.
My only problem with that side handle is it's a little cord you plug in, then you turn, and I'm like going, really?
Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't connect, so then you have to unscrew it again.
And that just seems kind of rinky-dink to me. A $12,000 camera, you know, and we got a little cable in there. What if that breaks? You have to buy a whole new handle?
Yeah, I guess so.
So that concerned me a little bit, but I've never heard anybody saying they had those issues, you know. But maybe you just put it together and leave it built, you know, and that way you're not.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people do. I mean, these cameras are small enough.
They are pretty small. Throw it in a case. So. All right, so there you have it. Look at the FS7 and the Canon C300 Mark II. Conclusions are they're pretty head-to-head.
They're pretty head-to-head. Both great options. Comes down to how you want to shoot and what you're familiar with. I think both can be, obviously, you know, when you get up to the $10,000 range, if you can't make a good image out of it, I don't think the camera is the problem.
That's probably the truth. So just to wrap this up, in my mind, check your wallet, check the footage, and make your own decision. So keep those cameras rolling, keep on clicking. If you're going to grow in your business, you've got to get some help. You've got to get help from mentors and people who can help you grow. I can do that for you. Go to theslanlens.com, sign up for our business material. It'll help change your life. You can sit and think about business, or you can do something about it, and it's time to do it.
So we have a lot of tests that we want to do in the future.
A lot of tests.
A lot of tests. There are lots of great cameras out there, and we want to put them head-to-head. But we're wondering about the format. Do you prefer this kind of format where it's studio lit, we're doing this kind of long slog of over and underexposure and ISO tests, or do you want to see us go out and shoot more real footage in real locations that seems more practical? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah. Let us know what you think. What do you think would be of value to you? And tell us what cameras you'd like to see head-to-head.
Seriously, we could always use recommendations for that.
Yeah, love to hear what you're thinking. Don't forget to subscribe to the Slanted Lens. Like us on Facebook. Tell your mother about us. Tell your mother's mother about us.